Audiobook narrator Mike Scott. When selecting your next audiobook, choose from some of the great titles narrated by audiobook narrator Mike Scott, like Bloody Autumn, the Shenandoah Valley Campaign of 1864. And if you're an author or publisher interested in having your written works produced as audiobooks, give Mike a shout at MikeScottVoice.com. Mike Scott, the voice of history. Well, we all went through that.
So it was actually exciting when everything went to digital because my parents got 2 more channels. One of them is entirely black and white. Me TV.
Oh, yeah.
My dad watches that all the time.
That's like old shows,
Mr.
right?
Ed and the Rifleman and all that.
Yeah.
Some of them are in color.
Oh, so yeah, there you go. I gotcha.
Yeah. Like that.
Baby, if you've ever wondered whatever became of me. Shh. I'm living on the air in Cincinnati.
Oh, my.
Cincinnati, WKRP. Got kind of time to pack it and unpack it.
Sing it, everybody.
This is my warm-up.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is another Ask a Guide. It's been such a long time. You guys get them on a regular schedule, but sometimes there's a good deal of time between our recording of these Ask a Guides. Isn't that right, Eric?
Yeah, Matt, that's right.
And so sometimes you get rusty. You get rusty and you forget how to do it. So
Yeah, a little bit here and there, you know.
A little bit here and there. Let's do some housekeeping quick before we get to our guest and stuff. So much exciting stuff has occurred. Number one, we've launched the reservation service with on our website for guides.
Indeed.
So now, as a listener, you can hire a licensed guide right through our website, and we had our first tour today, actually, from that.
Yeah, the first one actually went out.
And the person who did that tour also happens to be tonight's guest, totally accidentally, right? We didn't plan it that way. It just worked out that way. The great Jesse Weedleton is with us. Hello, Jesse.
Hey.
And how did it go? You tell me, as a guide, was it easy for you to, what did you have to do to meet your group there? How does it all work?
We met at the West End Guide Station, and then we did a point-to-point tour through the park, and we ended at the National Cemetery.
And nobody got lost?
No.
Nobody got lost? Follow the leader worked?
They were from Minnesota. So now, did you hear the accent in my voice? Did I pick it up?
I did. You picked it up.
That happens. It's a good thing you aren't Australian because...
Oh.
Go home real.
You know, I'm so bad in Australian accents. If I were Australian, I'd probably have a bad one. Like, I wouldn't be able to do it right. So before you met them there at the West End Guide Station, how did you know you even had a tour?
Oh, interesting. You should ask. I got several emails notifying me that my tour started at 2 p.m. today, and then I got a startling text at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. asking me where I was.
Oh, my.
So the tours they really can go at any time, but Bob, was the first one who gave us dates to book,
yeah.
And he likes 9 and 2. Okay, so every day, 9 and 2.
That's fair.
Bob got booked through another entity, and he said, I can't do Monday. And I said, okay. And I left the slots up there. I just took Bob off of them, and I made it call to book. Okay, so they had a call to book, where we discovered something very important. It had my personal phone number because I was very confused as to how they were calling my phone because we have it as a voicemail system. We got a Google Voice number. So anyway, call to book. But the guy calls on Friday, and his name was Tim. He's a very nice guy. He says, I want to do a tour. And I said, is this with Gettysburg or Addressing Gettysburg? And he says, Addressing Gettysburg. And I'm just bewildered because I'm like, well, how'd you get my number? I'm like, and he says, well, it's the number that's on the website. So I was like, well, I got to go change that. Anyway, long story short,
cool.
Thank you. Long story short, though, I called Jesse, and Jesse was our Savior.
So
that
even
time.
if it says call to book, some of us just have commitment issues in advance. But if we're free, we'll definitely do it the next day.
That's
or
true.
whatever it is.
Jesse, I've been after her. You're not alone. I've been after a few of our guest guides to give me some dates to try to sell them for. And, I'm really interested in this. And they never give me the dates.
We don't have tour minimums this year. We might just go to Alaska.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were like rolling in dough. I'm sorry.
I'm not, but I could die, you know?
Oh, okay.
Well,
if you didn't die last year, then you're probably going to make it through this year.
Really?
Yeah. Well, who knows? It's supposed to be the
I'm
best
not
year
even
ever.
half vaccinated yet.
Oh, yeah.
I am at the bottom of the list.
Nah, don't
So
worry about
come
it. You'll
July.
be fine. Anyway, so that's one of the things that we have going now. It's we've got a few reservations. Also, if you plan on coming to any of the Get Out of the Car tours this year, all you got to do is go to addressinggettysburg.com/tours, get on the calendar, find the date of the tour. It's marked as such. Just find the calendar, go to the month, and you'll see it's the third Saturday of each month. It's marked as a Get Out of the Car tour. All you need to do is register. They're free. But we would just like to get an idea of who's coming, or not even who, but how many people are coming. So we just want to get a head count for that. So that's one thing you could do there. Anything else, Eric? Anything else? I know. There is something else.
Oh.
The first lieutenants have made it on the scene. Many people have promoted themselves from second lieutenant to first lieutenant on Patreon now. It's patreon.com/addressinggettysburg. And those first lieutenants, they get everything that everybody below them has, but they also get video versions of the shows. In addition to that, we'll do live streams with them just to kind of talk a bit and just, see what's going on with our listeners and things. And other things that we will add as we go. Or maybe we'll create a captain level. We're not sure. We're going to see. There's a couple of things. But first, we got to get this computer ironed out. Yeah. Because we've had some issues with this computer. It's all like brand new components. But for some reason, it's just with the video editing, it is being fussy. And it crashed today. And
it crashed?
Yeah. No, there was a driver issue, and it was just, oy vey schmear. So it's Yiddish, or it's a very poor version of Yiddish. Yes. So anyway, that's what we have there. So today we are talking about the monumentation era. By the way, before you forget, don't forget, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Make sure you have your notifications turned on. Also, if you use the Apple Podcast app, please leave a 5-star review. Reviews, liking, sharing, and subscribing are the best ways to help us grow our audience and to keep informed as to what's going on in our wonderful world. Okay, now we're on to monumentation. The monumentation era. Jesse, my God, we put out the call to our wonderful patrons at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg, and they flooded the inbox with questions for you about the monumentation era. Who knew it was so interesting to people? I didn't know that.
I knew.
Oh, you knew. But I didn't. So, Jess, give us a little bit of a background on the monumentation era. When was it? What was it all about? Go ahead. Fill us in on all these things here before we get to the questions.
Well, that's a lot of... I already have a bunch of questions, Matt.
Uh-huh.
But the monumentation era basically starts... there's a lot of firsts that you could pinpoint. The first monument is the cornerstone for the Soldiers' National Cemetery in 1865. But... the Gettysburg Battlefield Memorial Association was established in April of 1864. And that is something we're going to talk about in a couple of these questions because that's really significant that people that live here before the war is over realize that something so significant had happened here. They don't know how the war is going to turn out at this point. But
that's a good point. They don't even know if their side has won yet.
But...
keep going.
What starts that is the National Cemetery. So the first thing is dealing with the dead that have been buried on the field but can't stay there. And initially it's the Union dead that are moved, and they've got to buy land for that. But it's land on Cemetery Hill that's key to the action. So that sort of gets the wheels turning, and we'll get into the details, I think, later.
Sure. I'm sure it'll
but
all come up.
With purchasing the land that the soldiers fought for beginning at that time. So it starts.
So in other words, what you're saying is
soon.
it's purchasing the land for the cemetery itself, but also the land that was fought over, which is also the same thing.
Really,
But are you talking about East Cemetery Hill, or are you just talking about what is now the National Cemetery?
First, what is now the National Cemetery.
Okay.
So that is the first land that is purchased because of the battle. And then it expands outside of that, but that really gets the ball rolling. So the seed is planted that it's not enough to mark the gravestones of the people that died.
Yeah.
We should mark and start to establish a park on the field.
Okay.
And then it's still, well, it's ended in the national park property, but it's still possible to place monuments about Gettysburg anywhere you can figure
Get
it out.
permission to do it.
So I don't know what year the Drummer Boy Monument went in across from Mr. G's, the Unity Park. That was a Boy Scout, Eagle Scout project
Yeah.
2016.
that Gary Castile sculpted.
Oh, yeah.
It was 2016 they dedicated
So
it.
that's the most.
Recent.
And then the Culp's Hill one that he did by the Abolition Brewing Company, that was also recent. So if you can find a place to establish a monument, but also a way to pay for the maintenance of it, you can do something.
Right. Okay.
So, for example, people think that, there are interpretive plaques going up by the Confederate monuments that there needs to be more on the field dealing with what the black community went through during the battle, that maybe that might be something that is added to either something close to the park.
Well, there is Lincoln Cemetery, and there's some markers across the street from that on Long Lane.
Yeah, so there are painted murals there.
Yeah. A lot of tourists don't go that way, so they probably don't see it, but there is not a lot, but there's some stuff that you could see. You could see like the grave of do you say Basil or Basil or Basil Biggs?
Avoid pronouncing.
Mr. Biggs. We
Sure.
call him. His grave is there. There's a few other prominent African Americans who are in Lincoln Cemetery. The problem is you can't get into the cemetery.
I would say Basil, but
Yeah, I say Basil.
I also say Gettysburg, and people say Gettysburg.
Yeah, Gettysburg is wrong.
I'm just over it.
All right. So you said the first monument was what, the cornerstone for the Soldiers National Cemetery, or for the what the hell was it?
The Soldiers National
Monument in the cemetery, or what is now the cemetery. What was the first memorial to a regiment or something put up on the field, or monument to a regiment?
See, there's the Minnesota urn. See, this I didn't go back.
Well, that's okay. That's what I was looking for. That's the answer I was looking for.
And that's what I said today. I was just like, oh man, I forget the year of the urn.
I think
Was that
it's
667? Oh, 67. Okay.
Don't worry, Fred Hawthorne isn't listening to this.
I think that's 67 because the cornerstone goes in 66.
Okay, yeah, it's those two numbers that get swapped. So 67 and 76 get swapped in my brain. So if you say 67, I think that's it.
Numeric dyslexia. Yeah.
Well, I have to me, all of the numbers have like a color associated with them.
Yeah, I do that too.
And I kind of memorize the color combination when I memorize.
Interesting.
So it kind of messes me up.
So yeah, like Custer died in 18
That's such
green.
a great job for that.
You know. Okay, go.
What?
Continue. Continue with your story.
So the first monument. So the urn goes above the graves of the Minnesota dead buried in the National Cemetery. But it's in the cemetery, so if you think, of the battlefield. But
Well, you
first,
think National Park, battlefield, but cemetery, where the cemetery is, was also battlefield.
right.
Oh, it's so confusing.
But then in 1879, the Second Massachusetts Monument is really the first regimental position. But before that, people were marking places where they lost people. So that's kind of the first concern of the veterans coming back. They remember where Reynolds was killed, where Colonel Vincent and, O'Rourke, and those events that were traumatic and the people that they lost are the first. That's why they look like little headstones, because they're just individual tributes to these people.
Yeah. Was
and then
wasn't
Massachusetts gets that. Massachusetts kind of starts a lot of things because
like the Revolutionary War?
Sure. And the segregation of the states in the National Cemetery. But once the second Massachusetts monument goes in, then that's the subject of these veterans reunions. So it's, well, we're going to place our
So
monument
that's
now.
over by Spangler Spring?
Yep.
Second Mass? Okay, so that was one of the first ones on the battlefield.
The first
Regimental
Yep.
monument. Because
And
the
then
urn is the
first-
memorial,
the
right?
The first monument on the battlefield is the monument to Strong Vincent's wounding. That's like that tall headstone.
Yes.
But that's not the oldest monument, even though it was the first, because the original one got knocked down by a tree or something. So.
Oh, okay. So that's
then
not
if
the
you're looking for the
original.
oldest one, it's another marker in the wheat field. It's a whole story.
The oldest what in the wheat field? What
Monuments.
Okay. Which one is that?
One. It's a guy in the 27th Connecticut, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right along the Wheatfield Road.
Yeah, well, we saw it
forget
on
his name.
one of the
But
tours.
that one's not in its original spot because
Right.
so they're moved when they get money for it's complicated. Everything's
Yeah.
complicated, and there's pretty much always an
Was it a
exception
colonel?
for-
Was it a colonel?
Maybe.
No,
Maybe
I
not.
think it was a lieutenant. Oh.
Veronica, Google that,
So
please.
there's
Wheatfield Road marker. You see what you find. Okay, go ahead.
all right. I bet Lieutenant Colonel.
We don't know. 27th Connecticut, but we don't know anything beyond that. Okay. Go ahead, Jess.
You're going to edit all this out, right?
No.
I know
This
you're
is
not.
this is yeah.
That's not what we do here.
I'm
we don't
at
edit.
I'm at peace with this.
Yes, this is very real.
It's just my audio file being immortalized.
When you're old and you die, and the community looks back in the Adams County Historical Society archives and they find this, they'll say, "Oh, listen to how young she sounds." And then everybody will be happy. All right. So anyway, so while she's looking that up, so you're not counting the Strong Vincent, the carving in the rock where Strong Vincent supposedly fell. You're talking about
No.
the thingamabob down.
But what
the, like,
constitutes a monument?
tombstone-looking thing.
So
Right.
the 5th New Hampshire can move a boulder from the battlefield and put it in a spot, and that's a monument. But the boulder's there, and you carve the monument. You carve it. Is that a monument?
Yeah, okay. Here, so 27th Connecticut, there are two monuments to the 27th Connecticut. The main monument is near
Henry
Ayers
Merwin.
Avenue.
Merwin, yes.
And
Lieutenant
Jedediah
Colonel
Chapman.
There
I'm
you
saying this
go.
before he says it, so I can salvage myself.
Good job. Now I'm just going to edit that out. I'm going to edit all this out and just make it look like it came out of my mouth. I don't know. Lieutenant Colonel Merwin, that's it. And Captain Jed Chapman fell. And so those markers there, yeah, and then the advanced position of the regiment. Okay, so you got it.
They've actually mapped my voice, and this is a deep fake of, of what I
Or
said.
you not knowing. That's all right. We all make mistakes. So go ahead, Jesse. You are continuing the story of the monumentation era. So let's get us into the 1870s, as there are a lot going on in the 70s now. 73 would be the 10-year anniversary. Did they care at that point, or were they too busy building their lives?
Most of it is building to a climax around the 25th anniversary as far as regimental monumentation goes. And then what happens after that is the War Department takes over several Civil War battlefields, and they want to instruct the military. So they have Chickamauga and Chattanooga, Antietam, Shiloh, Vicksburg, and Gettysburg. And that's kind of the first time they've got to convince the Union veterans to allow them to mark Confederate positions, because they want to basically map out the field like a chessboard and have both sides represented and study the battle.
I meant to ask you this before, so I hate to rewind to the 1860s, but Batchelder, doesn't he go around with a lot of the veterans and mark different things with stakes in the ground and all that stuff? So a lot of the, early monuments might be on the spot that he actually staked out, or...
Well, and if they're on a a different one, it's just because through his research, it's been adjusted. So he was the source that the GBMA he's the chief historian, the first chief historian of the park.
Okay.
Because, I mean, there's a long story there. As far as how Batchelder comes into the story, he was looking to do a painting. He does the painting, but in the research for the troop positions in the painting, he ends up talking to so many people that he's the expert.
Right.
And he's talking to Confederate wounded that are in the hospitals. He's talking to Union and Confederate, because the best fact that you could have is the most opposite perspectives coming together.
Yeah, sure.
And so it's hard for people to remember what happened to them. So with a monumentation, it's a monument. It's set in stone, but it's really not. It's just a combination of memories to the best of their ability after going through physical trauma.
Because I always wondered, because Gettysburg was, they've been through other battles besides Gettysburg, and they're all traumatic. And it's hard to remember
And
things.
they fight on all sorts of people's farms. So I talk about this stuff on every tour. And I feel like I'm repeating the tour I just gave Tim, and now he's going to listen to your podcast and hear it all over again. But I talk about this on every tour because I think it's what speaks to people the most, just putting themselves in somebody's shoes that has been through this experience, and now they've got to remember what happened to the inch on the field, when it's just one battle in a score of
scores.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not thinking as you're going through it, I've got to remember all these details because someone's going to ask me one day. Like, you're just like, get me out of this.
But then we get lucky because at Gettysburg, the boulders are so unique.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, they'd remember everybody remembers Devil's Den if the last time they came here was when they were 6 years old.
Yeah. It might be the only thing you remember.
And if that's the only thing protecting you from gunfire, you might remember the specific hole underneath the rock, or something like that. So
sure.
The stone walls that divide the properties, the boulders on the field are going to help people feel their way back to what happened.
Okay, so continuing on then with the story of monumentation.
You do know we have 50 questions to answer.
I know, but you want to give? Okay. I'm just trying to get you to give the background here, and it's 49. We took one out.
Oh, okay.
So go ahead.
But yeah, so it started before the war was over, and is still going on.
Okay,
monuments are still at the top of the headlines.
So you're right. Well, yeah, we're still talking about that. So okay, so let me try to help you through with what I'm trying to get you to do here. The monumentation era is from, when do we say it starts? 1860s is the earliest stuff, and then it goes all the way through the whens.
Through 2016?
Well, that's not the monumentation era.
Okay.
I'm talking when the veterans are doing it. What we think of as the monumentation era is what? When?
You just say it.
No, I'm asking you. I'm not the expert. It's while they're alive still, right? But the bulk of them are what, 1880s and 1890s when they're going up. Eric,
I'm not going to pick a year. Maybe someone has a year out there, but if there's,
All right, we're going to say 1880s and 1890s.
Yeah, when you look at like all of the, Michigan Day, New York Day, Pennsylvania Day, they're all in the 1880s. It's like 1885 to 1889.
Like the monument on Little Round Top goes up in 1890, the 44th and 12th New York. And that's one of the last. But then, you have the larger state memorials going up. The 50th anniversary.
Yeah, right. So we're going like late 1800s, early 1900s is when the bulk of the monuments that we see here today are going up, right? There's been some over the years, the Centennial. You have some monuments going up to the southern states, right? Or put up by the southern states. Mm-hmm. But we're not getting into that today. We're just talking about, that's a whole other show. That's like its own show, yeah. But we're just talking about the one that the veterans had something to do with. Okay, so what we're going to do then is, there's nothing more you want to add to that?
No.
Okay, so we're going to take a break. We're going to take a break because, like Jesse said, we have We have 50 questions, and we've got to get to them. So we're going to take our quick little commercial break, and then we'll come back, and we will do just that. Answer those questions. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, Addressing Gettysburg is proud to announce that hiring one of the guides you hear on our show is now as easy as pie. By coming on our show, the licensed battlefield guides do all of us a great service, and we want to give back to them while making your access to them effortless. So when you're booking your hotel for your next trip to Gettysburg, make sure you go to addressinggettysburg.com/tours and book a guide too. Just go to addressinggettysburg.com/tours, choose the date you'll be here, and book. Due to COVID protocols, you and the others on the tour will follow the guide, who will be in his or her own car. For your safety and ease of travel, every tour is limited to 4 vehicles. And if you have a large group, a custom tour request, or you want to request a particular guide, we've got you covered there as well. So hurry, spring and summer are just around the corner. Plan your trip to Gettysburg today and book a guide at addressinggettysburg.com/tours. That's addressinggettysburg.com/tours.
Tell you what, this might come in handy if the lockdowns continue throughout the winter. Plowman Cider is a proud sponsor of Addressing Gettysburg and wants to offer our listeners the chance to bring Adams County's delicious agricultural countryside to the comfort of your own home this winter. Grown and fermented on Plowman's 7th-generation family farm, their heirloom and bittersweet apple varieties will soothe you right down to the ground. You can get Plowman Cider on Gettysburg's historic Lincoln Square at their tap room, or have it shipped to your home by visiting plowmancider.com. Addressing Gettysburg listeners can use the coupon code CIDERPOD at checkout to enjoy 15% off your order. So put a taste of Adams County in your glass this winter with Plowman Cider. Go to plowmancider.com and use promo code CIDERPOD for 15% off. That's PLOUGHMANCIDER.com. You must be 21 years of age, and shipping is subject to your state's regulations.
Getty's Bike Tours has something special for you. It's a special offer that they've got going on. If you call 717-752-7752 and you make a reservation by April 20th of 2021, you're going to get 15% off the tour reservation. Now, this is for tours only, not for rentals. So you got to make sure that you call 717-752-7752 before or by April 20th to receive that 15% off of your tour. Your tour can be any time in the 2021 season, but you got to make the reservation by April 20th. 15% off. You got to call 717-752-7752. Someone will get back to you if they don't pick up, and you will let them know that you heard about them on Addressing Gettysburg, and they'll give you 15% off. You know how I know this? Because it was my idea. Think outside the box. 717-752-7752. That's 717-752-7752 for those of you who prefer it that way. 717-752-7752.
Gettysburg, a nation divided. The battle that changed America. Avatars, generals, artifacts, games, 360-degree views, an immersive battlefield experience. A new way to discover history. Gettysburg, a nation divided, an augmented reality, narrated by Scott Eastwood.
Download it from your phone's app store today and support Addressing Gettysburg by entering GBurg1863 in the referral code prompt after downloading.
Do you have a local business in Gettysburg? Do you want to reach people who are itching to visit us, but don't know exactly where to stay, where to eat, or what to do while they're here? Well, then you should consider advertising on Addressing Gettysburg. You can reach thousands of Gettysburg enthusiasts per month who are within a 4 to 8 hour drive of us, as well as all over the world. Reach them where they are before they're already in town. This is the more affordable and more 21st century way to advertise. So contact us at advertise@addressinggettysburg.com for more information. That's advertise at addressinggettysburg.com.
Oh, our favorite place to get books and spend way too much money. Not because they're expensive, but because we buy too many books. What is the name of that place, Eric?
It's for the historian, Matt.
That's right. That's right. They've got a wide variety of titles, new and used, military books from publishers like Osprey, Casemate, Gettysburg Publishing, Stackpole, Savas Beatty, McFarland, UNC Press, and more. I haven't been there in 2 weeks, and it is nothing against them. It's because I have no more room to put books. I have to get more. I have to make more room in my house and then put a bookshelf there.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, I've been out of bookshelf space for quite some time, and now I've filled up all the other available space around my bookshelves with stacks of books.
Yes.
So I have to lay off for a while.
Yeah, and maybe go on top of my bookshelves, like start stacking them there, maybe get some bookends or something.
Yeah. That could work. I've got like helmets and hats and stuff up there on mine, but
yeah, so do I. And put like pictures of my niece and nephew, but they may have to come down because they don't come and visit their favorite uncle anymore. And they have toy soldiers at For the Historian, which I will not be getting for my niece and nephew since they don't come and visit, and model kits, which I also won't be. Games, children's books, all this stuff I'm not getting for them because they won't come and visit me. Of course, it's not all their fault. It's really their mom and dad's fault because they don't drive down. They say they're coming in May. But that remains to be seen. I'll believe that when I see that.
Blame your siblings.
Yeah. So anyway, stop by and check them out on your next visit to Gettysburg. Or even better, you can order online. You don't need to wait until you get here. You can order online at forthehistorian.com. And whether it's online or in person, just mention that you heard about them on Addressing Gettysburg in the note to seller box online or to their face when you go into the store. And they will either refund your shipping costs if it's an online sale, or you'll get 20% off the retail price when you go into the store. That's forthehistorian.com or 717-685-5207. That's forthehistorian.com, 717-685-5207.
You're listening to the Addressing Gettysburg podcast with Matt Keller.
All right, we're back now with our questions from our patrons over at patreon.com/Addressing Gettysburg. You want to ask some questions to our guides? Then you got to become a patron over at patreon.com/Addressing Gettysburg. Okay, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. JP Horsemanship, the horsiest man around, starts off by cutting to the quick. How controversial, Jesse, were controversial monuments? How controversial were Confederate monuments when they were erected, and how did the local community react versus how the Union veterans reacted? First, how controversial were they? Were they controversial back then?
Yes, they've always been controversial. Because we're trying to deal with sewing our country back together after its inhabitants fought and killed each other for years. So It's something we're still working on, but and that we've always been working on. And it's where you're going to have sort of a division between the veterans, the Union veterans who view the Confederate monuments, Confederate battle flag, and anything like that as a representation of treason.
What do you call the flag, Eric?
The treason rag.
The treason rag.
See? And nervous laughter. But and then you have the people that are looking at the big picture, looking at how do we tell the story of this battle? How do we make sure that this story endures in history? The people are still studying this. How do we include everyone, but make it about education? But also move toward reconciliation, bringing the veterans back together themselves eventually on the battlefield. So there are first some little arguments back and forth when the War Department takes over. Again, their aim is to equally mark the battlefield. Mm-hmm. And they want to do this in a way that doesn't involve too much emotion as best as they can do it. So they're not going to make the Union Army look like the victor over, they're trying to remain impartial when they're coming up with all of the wording for the tablets, the placement of the the cannons that's happening at that time.
This is the War Department, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
In 1895, the War
Gotcha.
Department takes over. And this is one of their first things. But John Batchelder is still involved. And he, if you look through the Batchelder papers at this time, he's writing back and forth to Union veterans, including generals and different officers, and asking them what they think about it. And when we're just talking about these impartial markers, people like Dan Sickles are writing back saying that they support them, that anything that you'd add to it would create more interest. So they're looking at visitation on the battlefield as well. But in the eyes of Union veterans that support Confederate markers, it's because you can't change the outcome of the story. And the more you show how much there was against them, the more powerful their victory becomes.
Right. What good is Batman without the Joker, is what I always say.
And you'll also find out over time, not just
Nothing on that one? Nothing? You didn't like that?
If it's a movie reference, I just talk right over it.
Well, it's not. It's. I think anybody could get this. It's what good is Batman without the Joker? All right. Other people like it. Ted Savas liked it. Okay. Go ahead.
I got thoughts in my brain.
I know. I can't knock you off course because then you get all flustered. Don't worry. Just keep going.
And then I start swallowing.
Swallowing and nervous laughter. Yeah, it's okay. Okay, let's give Jesse her.
Quiet. I want to ask you a bunch of questions.
Okay.
And I want to have them answered immediately.
Now go.
Just a moment of silence for the joke landing. Dead.
Yeah, all right.
But it's not just the monuments, it's also like the cyclorama painting, and there's the more, and just the how close it was in the battle. All these things are exaggerated by Union veterans because it makes it seem more powerful when they overcome this. That the Confederates came minutes, between disaster for the Union Army, but they charged at the last second, and that saved the day. So nobody, it's not going to be a good story if the Confederacy never had a chance against
Right.
them.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay.
So the Union veterans, though, they're feeling that to put up anything more than these War Department markers would be too much, or are they even against those?
I really haven't done the original source research on the people, what they. It does seem like Batchelder's trying to get support, like he's, trying to get evidence to fight back, as he wants to place Southern markers on the field.
Right.
But I don't know, what was brought up first in that instance. I know what Eric found an article from the 2nd Maryland Monument.
Yeah.
So the different newspapers start talking about that one. Do you just want to do that one now?
So that one that I sent you is actually, that comes from the 2nd Maryland Monument, right? That is out of the National Tribune, which was the newspaper of the GAR. But it comes a month after Pennsylvania Day in 1889. So in October of 89, this article comes out, and it's actually a resolution from the Abe Patterson Post 88 in Allegheny City. And what's happened is these guys came to Gettysburg to dedicate the monuments for most of the Pennsylvania regiments that were here. And they realized that there is a monument to a Confederate regiment on Culp's Hill. And they are
that had been there since
upset.
1886, but nobody really noticed it until all of these.
It was like nobody realized it was there, and then the Pennsylvanians show up, and they're very bitter about this. If you read like the monument dedication speeches for the Pennsylvania regiments, a number of them talk about this being an issue. I think it's J.C. Truesdale of the 105th PA talks about it. He's a chaplain, and his and Thomas Merchant of the 84th Pennsylvania, they've got two of the more vitriolic ones out of Pennsylvania. Merchant actually says that all of the United Confederate Veterans posts should have been squashed as soon as they came into being. Like, they have absolutely no reason to be around, and the government is not. No government on earth is strong enough to maintain glorification of treason against itself. They're very vitriolic speeches, some of them. But anyways,
you kind of have to understand. You understand that side of it, though.
Sure, absolutely.
But then you also kind of understand the other side of it. Like, we went through this together, and you want to have some kind of fraternal order afterwards. But yeah, it's such a complicated thing, and I think that's why it's still unresolved.
Well, and when the veterans were alive, what is bringing the white Union and Confederate veterans together is their similar experience throughout the war.
Yeah.
That they charged across fields just like Pickett's charge in the Union side at other battles.
Mm-hmm.
They went through the same awful experience. They were drafted. There's many similar experiences that they had. And, some of them joined their local militia unit, not thinking the war would last more than a couple months. And here they are at the bloodiest battle in the Civil War.
Well, did you have something to finish with that? Were you done with that?
Oh, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff I can throw in there, but we'd be here all night.
Okay.
Well, and as far as the community's reaction in Gettysburg versus the Union veterans is what he's asking.
Yeah, that was the next.
The community of Gettysburg is I would say pro-Union. They don't want Confederate veterans buried in the National Cemetery or the local cemetery. So they've fought back in the past against that. But Union veterans, the government, when we talk about the government in the War Department years, the government is veterans. And the government commissioners are Union and Confederate veterans, and most of which fought at the battle. So those are the people writing these impartial tablets. They're people that they have, I think, 3 Union and 1 Confederate coming up with all of this.
Contributing to what's on the tablets, you mean?
To the tablets. And then when the Southern State monuments start going on the field, the one that really has the most of the letters back and forth, pro and con, is Virginia's, because people are still alive on both sides that have feelings about it.
The other thing he asks, and this is my favorite question, I think, of the night. He says, also, do other countries have monuments to both the winner and the loser of their war? Or is that just something that we do? And you found an interesting answer to this question.
So I am not an expert.
Not an expert, but you found an answer that might lead y'all to think that maybe it's not as cut and dry as we think it is today.
Because I was just like, I don't know. And so
because we hear this argument now, everybody says, well, why do you want monuments to the losers anyway? And it's not exactly that easy.
The struggle of any country to heal itself after something like that happens, and the people that lost don't leave. They're part. And
they're part of the country.
It was Lincoln's, plan and desire to fight the war until the Southern states were reincorporated. The "let them up easy" quote. So, which Andrew Johnson took a little too far after Lincoln was assassinated. But so if you, to save us some time, just go to
well, give us a little bit of what you got there, because you can't don't tell them just where to go. You were saying that, what was it, in China? And I was half eating my pizza and half listening and half vaccinated at the same time. So forgive me. But in China, there are monuments to losers in China. And I can't remember which conflict it was, but you found an interesting thing there, and I'm stalling for you.
It was like the Chinese Civil War and the Sino-Japanese War.
Yes.
Sino-Japanese. We helped you pronounce some words.
In Szechuan.
Like the sauce.
This is why I'm not reading.
The buffalo of China. We've already been through this.
So people chime in on this on Quora.com. Someone asked the same exact question. And people chime in from all different countries.
All over the world.
From Brazil, from China, from Canada.
So this is a Brazilian from China Europe, saying what about
China? From Australia. And they're saying in this square in Sichuan, they have Sichuan. I don't know. I can't say this word.
The square in Sichuan.
The square has statues of both nationalists who lost the Civil War and the communist general who fought in it, all next to each other. And it's probably the only place in the world where you'll find a statue of Chiang Kai-shek.
Yeah.
And a statue of Mao Zedong at the same location.
So that's interesting that if the communist Chinese can have some kind of statue to their vanquished foe, it is kind of puts, because I did think that we were the only country that had statues to the losers until you read that.
My position on Confederate monuments is that there's something to learn from all of it. And if you take the thing that starts the conversation away, you lose the opportunity to talk about it in the same way with the same emotions.
There's no time.
Oh, you're pissing off Robert E. Lee, but go ahead, continue.
I mean, that's basically.
No, I agree with you. I agree. They have to be used.
There's so
for
much
education.
here, and there's no easy answer to any of this. There's no easy answer to why was the Civil War fought in the first place.
Right.
That takes another 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's not something you can put a blanket statement on in really any aspect of the controversy.
I always thought that simple answers show simple minds. Someone says the Civil War is about one thing and one thing only, whatever that is, they've got a simple mind. And they're giving a simple answer because it's nothing. You look at anything today, ask anybody today what a certain issue is about, and you're not going to get a simple answer. And if you do, that person has a simple mind. But for the most part, if the person has half a clue as to what's going on, it's going to be a complex answer because whatever it is a complex situation. The Civil War was a complex situation. Anything that makes a country kill itself is a complex situation.
And to me, the thing that means the most in that situation is just studying individually what caused these people who might have acted differently under different circumstances to do what they did.
Yeah.
Like people that grew up in Gettysburg who moved to West Virginia, then Virginia, and end up fighting in Lee's army on the farms of their families.
Yeah. It's weird.
It's right.
But when they moved there was no war. They were moving there for work. It was a job, and then things change and you're kind of stuck and you have friends. Maybe you got a gal and you're part of the local drinking militia. What are you going to do? You're going to go with your buddies. You're going to go fight this, 3-week war or whatever.
And they're kids.
That's a huge factor that I don't think a lot of people.
Old and wise.
Yeah, but I was talking to somebody the other day about this, and we were talking about the book An Environmental History of the Civil War. Have you read it?
No.
You got to read it. It's great. I'll let you borrow it. And they talk about just very basic things, fundamental things like diarrhea and diet, and why if you're starving you don't want to have a lot of fruits and vegetables if you're starving because you're just gonna have diarrhea. So anyway, talking about all that stuff, and whoever I was talking to was like, how did they do that? Like, what? And they were able to. How are they able to do that? Blah blah blah. And keep on going and all that. And I'm like, they're 20 years old. There was a lot of things that I could do at 20 years old that I can't do now, and they were miserable. But I was able to grin and bear it. But I can't do that now. And that's the thing is we're not thinking like 20-year-olds anymore because we're not. I'm 42. You're almost 50. So I mean, we have a long way.
I'm older than Strong Vincent.
Yes. Think about that. Yep. So do you want to move on to the next question now?
Sure.
Okay. Chaplain Cox asks, what role did the town play in the monumentation of the battle? Did they like the idea of veterans coming to town and putting up monuments in their backyards?
I mean, there's got to be somebody, waving their cane at the...
There was.
But, I mean, the town is the reason for the battlefield, and the development in the extent that happened, I think, for what we talked about earlier. But Specifically, Gettysburg is on the map because it's the county seat of Adams County. The courthouse is here, so lawyers live close by. You have, long story short, there are people with money in Gettysburg. There are people running the industry in Gettysburg. And the two lawyers that don't like each other really get everything started. So you have David Wills, who has connections, and he's going to be able to get the support of Governor Curtin and take over the cemetery project,
Right.
which is something that his rival David McConaughey wanted to do because McConaughey was president of Evergreen Cemetery. So, like, this is what I do.
Don't
man,
make sense.
you know?
That
I want
it's my
this.
bag, baby.
But he didn't have the right connections in that case. But McConaughey's the one that's like, well, if you've got that, then I'm going to start buying the rest of Cemetery Hill, and I'm going to buy Little Round Top and Culp's Hill. And so the David McConaughey gets the ball rolling and really is the reason for the Gettysburg Memorial Association, or GBMA. And so, yes, the townspeople have a great deal of influence, but
And also, they're very quickly making a buck off of tourists. After
well,
the
and they're
battle,
able
right?
to offer fair prices. I mean, I don't know what those prices were, but people accepted it. You know, they had the choice to sell their
Sure.
property; they didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
And like the story of the Leicester house.
Well, has she moved it?
Right.
Or- yeah.
So Lydia Leicester does well. I've heard
Oh, yeah.
several stories that she, all the dead horses are all over her property. So she sells the bones. She makes, I've heard that she made black paint after the bones were burned, or the carcasses were burned of all the horse piles that are everywhere.
Interesting.
And she builds an addition onto her home. But when the Memorial Association wanted to acquire that property, of course, they didn't want the extra part. So she just sold her farm and moved the rest downtown, which is now a bed and breakfast attached to the Dobbin
To the
House.
Dobbin House,
Which they
yeah.
call the Leicester
Yeah.
House, right?
I believe they do. The Lydia Leicester house. Yeah, that's an interesting thing that for a while that was a 2-story little farmhouse there, the Leicester House, after the battle. And then she took. See, now
And
I
it was
heard the story
Basil
that
Biggs that's cutting down the trees at the copse of trees.
Yes. And they're like, "What are you doing?"
Until Batchelder convinces him that he'd make more money selling it to the park.
Yeah.
But then there's also Joseph Scherfy, who apparently loved tourists and saved all the bullet holes in his house and
You could still
gave
see
people
them.
peaches when they'd walk through the orchard.
Yeah.
And really welcome the tourism. The
park has-
it's an opportunity. Gettysburg's on the map now. You know, you get on board or get out of here, and it's kind of the same feeling I have today.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Really, these tourists just drive through town and can't go through the circle. Well, they're running your
Yeah, exactly.
your business is alive because of it.
You have a roof over your head because of them.
Right.
The Park Service has a peach in a jar
Yes,
that's supposedly from the battle.
I
saved
talk about
by
this
Mr.
on
Scherfy.
on a lot of my tours.
What about it?
But you can look it up on their
Wait. What do you
website.
talk about on the tours? Regarding the peach?
The moldy peaches. Yeah, I
Yeah.
talk about this.
What do you say?
Well, just that, there's a whole basement to the visitor center. And one of the coolest thing
basement of
down
the
there
Alamo.
is a black blob in the bottom of a jar. But it's a
Yeah.
can of peaches from...
No, it's one peach. It's one peach, isn't it? I thought it was one peach. Or is it a
I don't
whole
know
jar
what
of
it is.
peaches?
It's black.
It is black.
They just describe it as like a black...
It's disgusting.
with mold.
Unrecognizable organic
But they
material.
have,
Yes.
they have pictures of most of the cool things in their collection. So even though it's hard to get down there, you have to organize it. You can search it on the Park Service website and see pictures of.
It is pretty neat though to see. But the Leicester house though, I heard that that it wasn't that the Park Service wasn't interested in, or the War Department, whoever it was, wasn't interested in the second story. It's just that she'd built it over time or whatever, but she built it herself. And so she was like, well, I built this and I'm taking it with me. Like it was more of that Pennsylvania Dutch way people are, where it just doesn't make sense, very like selfish and like, that type of a thing. So, but whatever, there's a million stories to all the different stories, a million versions, I mean. So go ahead. We'll move on to the next one. Ready?
Yes.
Joe Jacobs, he has 2. I've always wondered why the 78th and 102nd New York share a monument. Also, how did they get all the names for the Pennsylvania Memorial? Have they ever had to take the a name off of it or add one? Just curious. You're not just curious, Joe. You want to know because you sent in a question.
Well, if you're just curious, then we'll skip it.
Yeah, we'll just skip it.
The 78th and 102nd were combined after Gettysburg. So they become one in 1864 because of the attrition in both regiments. So they share a special bond that way.
Didn't they also
I don't know
often
if they were
fight next to each
sister
other?
Regiments, but yeah, they're in the same brigade. They're in Green's brigade and get swept off to Tennessee after the Battle of Gettysburg. But the Pennsylvania Monument, I talk about that a lot because I'll tell you why. But when you walk up to the monument and you see all the names, you see the stars next to the names of the dead, but also names that have been taken off the monument with a mechanical
chiseled off or something.
It looks like an etcher, or
like
something.
a Dremel tool or something like that.
And so 1910, they have to try to figure out what record they're going to use to put the people that were here on the monument. So not the people that deserted right before the battle, if they can help, the people that were in this campaign, present at Gettysburg. So the closest record they have is the end of every month, the Union Army gets paid. So it's the payroll record at the end of the month, which is the day before the battle starts. So they figure, well, how much closer could you get? It's one day before at the end of June. Well, to put yourself in the perspective of a 19-year-old boy from Pennsylvania who's been fighting and losing for 2 years in Virginia, it's demoralizing. And although things have been turning up in the Army, they're feeding people better, the hospitals are organized better. There's still plenty of hope, of course. But in certain situations, you just have people that are so tempted by the fact that here they come and their army is finally leading them out of Virginia and they're going back home. So you'd be tempted to, if you were close by, to sneak home and see people maybe, not knowing when the battle's going to be fought.
Right.
Maybe you had every intention to come back.
Right. You were just saying hi.
But you get some money at the end of the month. So
you're flush with cash. You're back home. You're not far from where you live, maybe.
And who's George Meade? I haven't heard of him,
Exactly.
So Meade gets command of the Army 3 days before the battle starts. And, who is this guy? Is he just going to lead you to another pretty embarrassing failure if it happens here?
The worst.
And so there were soldiers that ducked the ranks right before the battle started, like that night. And as proof of this, so some people have just, their battlefield guides have their favorite regiment or regiments that their ancestors were in. And so in certain cases, you have really thorough research that's been done on like everybody from that regiment. And my friend Dave Donahue was researching the people in the 69th Pennsylvania, which fights right at the angle.
One of the monuments that we've adopted, by the way.
Okay. So that was your first one, right?
We did them all at the same time.
Yeah.
That was the first tour, but we adopted them all at the same time.
Well, he said that there were several folks in that regiment that took the money, bought a train ticket, and went back to Philadelphia.
Yes. Actually, that was mentioned on our tour with Scott Hartwig.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then he said one of the guys who got away changed his name and enlisted later when they were offering bounties for joining. So I don't know where he ended up.
Oh yeah. There was a story like that too. Who was that? I do remember that too.
So the story.
That's why, ladies and gentlemen, you got to come to our tours so that you can remember it for me.
So the story of the names that are missing is, they've got these people on the monument who got their pay but weren't here. And who's going to know that?
Yeah.
It's the people you left behind who fought the bloodiest battle, and you weren't there. And they did this. They had to do this without you.
So then they what? They said.
But the Pennsylvania Monument goes on the field in 1910. In 1913, you have the most people you're going to have, probably, from
50th
those regiments
anniversary.
coming back, save the time that they dedicated their monument. And they're looking down those lists of names, and they know, who shouldn't be there. So it causes the Park Service to revise the monument, and I think the last revision happened in the 70s, and they're just like, this is enough.
Because nobody's alive.
Well, they just got to make a commitment to what's on the monuments, just like the Confederate monuments. So it's on the monument, and we can put something up in front of it that interprets it, but what's on the monument is on the monument, and we're just leaving it that way. So I don't know if you want to include this or not, but I can add another story. So one really interesting story I found on a Facebook group that I follow called Retro York. And it's because I'm from more of the York area, Pennsylvania. And my grandparents were active in their historical society out there. But this guy had an ancestor that was listed on the Pennsylvania Monument. When he was younger, his dad would show him the name of this ancestor. But he wasn't really enlisted with the regiment. His ancestors were farmers, and when the Confederate cavalry was out near Hanover, they were sweeping through and taking everything, and then the Union cavalry fought them, the Battle of Hanover, and then everybody starts concentrating toward Gettysburg. So these farmers just joined up with the Union soldiers and rode off with them toward Gettysburg, and they fought with a Pennsylvania regiment. And so to honor them and their help and their service fighting with them, they put this man's name on their, I think it's the 26th Pennsylvania.
PED?
His last name is Mall.
It's not the emergency.
No.
Okay.
Like it's on the right side of the memorial.
Okay. The right side.
And so then
from where?
The front.
Okay.
So the south side.
So so when you're looking at the stairs, turn right when you go around the monument. Go ahead.
And so I guess, his dad took him there when they were little, showed him the name on the monument, and then he goes back, after this. And so the last revision in the 70s, and there's just a ground off empty space because he wasn't on the roster, and they didn't.
So it was something that the regiment did.
So that was like a sad mistake.
The guys in the regiment did that.
Just from his story. So he's, that's his
No, but I'm
story.
saying they added the name.
Apparently, yeah.
To honor this guy that, was brave enough to fight with it. So John Burns then isn't the only civilian that came and fought with the Army. Is that... do we believe this story about the guy from the 26th?
I don't know. I say yes.
I'd like to believe that story.
Never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
No, exactly. Here is another example of not letting the truth get in the way of a good story. A direct descendant of the general himself, one of our newest patrons, Roy Mead.
Are you serious?
I don't know, but don't let that get in the way of a good story.
Okay.
He says, "Hi, Matt. My question for Jesse is, why did North Carolina purchase the land where the North Carolina Monument is? Was that commonplace, and does North Carolina still own that land today? Thanks for the great shows. You are awesome, and Eric's kind of okay, all right, as well, too." Well, thank you. Thank you, Roy Mead.
I'll take that as a win.
Now, we might have... Did he answer you back, Jess? During the break, Jesse told us that.
Okay, I phoned a friend for this because I wanted to know the details, and the story I always heard but never looked at the deeds or anything like that was that North Carolina purchased the plot for the monument before, like as part of their fundraising. So they got $50,000, and the story was that they had to buy the land itself, that little square that they're on, and that's what those big pillars on each corner of the plot were for. But I have a friend who's an expert at this because he loves the story of every single piece of land that's been added to the park. He had extensive access to the Park Service library and has collected and organized all of this stuff. So he could tell you the farmer's name who owned whatever spot you're standing on and the year that it was incorporated into the park, whether it be by the GBMA, by the War Department, or 5 years ago. So his name is Ben Dixon. He is a doctor and a professor at SUNY University. And he tells me that North Carolina never had to buy anything. They didn't have to buy the land because it was already part of the park. So this is a pretty big.
So this is a huge
yes
story.
But
here.
he's like, he sends me like 3 emails on this. I did just text him to see if he wanted to be on the podcast, but he says I am swamped tonight. You go ahead and say it for me. I'm not going to take the credit.
All right, so I'm not calling him tonight. All right, but now.
But
where does this story come from? Because
there's a big plot of land that the park acquired in 1907, and according to the records that he has, all of the Confederate, it was a huge Pickett's Charge land purchase, all that area, and that it was in where the North Carolina Monument stands today was on land that was already part of that acquisition. So why would they have to buy something if the War Department already owned it?
So the War Department didn't buy it from North Carolina. No, because
his last date is 1907, that it is in the hands of the War Department.
Okay. That's when it is.
And then I was like, the other thing I asked him was,
hold on. 1907 is when it was placed in the hands of the War Department, when they acquired it. Okay. So who had it beforehand? When was the monument?
I know that he knows, and I can get that for you. Okay. But I don't know.
Well, do we know when the monument was built? It was
1929. But they started organizing it in 27.
So, all right, fine. So then if the War Department had that property in 1907 and the monument was put up in 1929.
In order to be definitive in order for me to, put my name on this, I want to know where the story comes from. So there's a story of the story. Where did that start and what caused it to start? Was it just some sort of wording? Because you can find newspaper articles very thoroughly describing what's going to go there. So where the stones are going to be on the corner of the plot. But is that do people think that just means that they own it?
Right, because
there are they're planning to put the monument, but it's not really.
There are those corner markers there, which are part of the monument, but they're on the corner of North Carolina soil, which is what I was always told.
Right. Did the veterans just say that, at their reunions? This is my land, or something? Right. I don't know.
But so I asked somebody about this story.
Okay.
And it was somebody who, I can't remember exactly who it was, and I don't want to say their name because if it's wrong, I don't want them to get yelled at by people online. But it was someone affiliated with the Park Service. I can't remember if it was current or retired. I talked to a lot of people. Anyway.
I just don't think anyone that has worked for the Park Service is obsessed with this subject in the way that Ben is. So that's why I just have a hard time refuting this, because I just know I haven't known him for very long, but I know that he's passionate about this and cataloging this and organizing this.
I almost forgot now. I think I forgot what the story was. It wasn't that they owned it. Mm-hmm. But for a period of time, they maintained it.
Oh, okay.
They took they paid for the maintenance of it, maybe during the Depression, but that doesn't make sense that a state would be paying.
Like an adopt a position.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Right, when I had asked them, I heard that North Carolina owned this soil until 1930 or 1933 or whatever it was. And
that's what everyone says, so I've been saying. And so I'm going to stop saying it yesterday.
Well, but this person said, no, they maintained it, but it was always Park Service. What I'd like to know is where that story started.
Yes.
And how is your friend so sure? Well, how is he so sure? And everybody else, if there's 10 people telling this story, right? Or if there's 10 people talking about North Carolina, the monument.
History is an ever-evolving
9
beast.
of them are saying the story that we are aware of, that we've always heard. One of them is your friend, and he's saying that's not true. So how does he know so confidently? Because he studies deeds.
Yeah, I was
He's
just
a
gonna
deeder.
say, 9 out of 10 people are telling
a yarn.
that the 151st PA was the school teacher regiment. Because there was a whole company of school teachers, and there's like 10.
Right.
Yeah.
That the battle was
more
fought
than
over
average.
shoes because there was a shoe factory here in Gettysburg.
Weinbrenner Shoe Factory.
There was a Tom McCann at best, maybe a Buster Brown on the other side of town, but that was it.
I always thought it was an Oshkosh Bagosh.
You just wanted to say Oshkosh Bagosh.
Absolutely.
So
Boy, howdy.
The other thing Ben has been doing is all the guides know him because he has this ongoing research project, just researching how everything from the guide's perspective has changed over the years. So it's really interesting.
Oh, that is interesting. Like
set
what?
he's got
Like what do you mean?
Like he wants to know how you give a tour. So everybody has something that they feel most comfortable with, and a way that they give a tour it's not only your personal preference, it's what's going on in the world at the time. All sorts of things influence this, like the influence of the Gettysburg movie. A lot of us are realizing that people haven't seen that, it's getting outdated, and because people have had to fight back and try to represent people other than Chamberlain. Now there are new favorites. So there's always going to be, so Culp's Hill is bigger now than it's been in a long time.
And it's going to be bigger once they close Little Round Top.
Right.
I'm looking forward to that. Culp's Hill getting
It was
its
all
due.
the right flank. It's the only flank there was.
But you're right.
So
Yeah.
things change over time, and
No, that's a great point because the movie, Tim always says that when he was a youngster growing up and coming here, the 1st Minnesota was the 20th Maine. Not that they were on Little Round Top, but that was the regiment that everybody was enamored with, was the 1st Minnesota. Mm-hmm. Now you don't even, nobody knows about the 1st Minnesota unless you know, like you're really into this stuff.
well, Tim knows about it.
Tim knows about it, and I'm sure he tells people on his tour. I know Bob does. I've been on tours with Bob.
I mean, my guy today from Minnesota.
What? Oh, that Tim. Well, I would hope you would show someone from Minnesota, the 1st Minnesota. Yeah, okay. So let's move on to the next one there. Timothy Dolan. Cardinal Dolan. He says, what's the story of Wisconsin's dedication day? I see they were all dedicated on the same day, and I've heard of newspaper articles describing speakers at the event, but detailed records and transcripts of the day are non-existent. The Cardinal would like to know.
I found all of them. No, I'm just kidding.
No, yeah.
Sorry.
Poor Tim.
I looked. I would love to have found something, but it seemed to me what I did was I had like a week to get ready for this episode. I wasn't expecting so many specific questions, which was cool. I learned a lot and definitely found some stuff.
You're welcome.
I'm going to add to some tours in the rabbit holes I discovered in the midst of this. But I just pulled out all of the Wisconsin regimental histories and the secondary histories that it compiled. There are a bunch of Iron Brigade books, and just to see if anyone referenced anything like that, because I know that, if stories are being told at those reunions, that's why people like to use them. It's just another source, but I couldn't find anything. And what I found was it seems to me that the Iron Brigade and also the Wisconsin regiments were more excited about their reunions in Milwaukee. So the reunions at home were, I wouldn't say, I guess, yeah, they were a bigger deal.
It's easier to get to.
And some stuff happened, like, okay, so the 26th Wisconsin, who fought on the first day near Barlow's Knoll, they had a major reunion in 1887 for their 25th anniversary of the regiment. So not
of the battle.
Right. And so 1888 is going to be the big year for battle monumentation. But They had this big 25th anniversary. They're a mostly German regiment, so their speeches are in German.
Yeah.
And that's the only picture I could find of one of the Miss Wisconsin dedications at Gettysburg was what the Milwaukee Historical Society has. They have a picture of it with the veterans there, and they have all of the people in the picture labeled. But then the Iron Brigade has a huge, so that's 1 year before Gettysburg. So they just did this big reunion. And then the Iron Brigade has a huge reunion in Milwaukee in 1880 with 150,000 people in attendance. Ulysses S. President Grant is there. Sheridan is there. They have their mascot, the eagle, Old Abe. And then Old Abe dies right after this series. So maybe they don't have their eagle. They already did. I don't know. But, they were here. But it seems that they note the 50th anniversary in the histories, but not really the dedication.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would imagine it's probably, it's a long distance to travel back in those days,
Well,
even by railroad.
Like Pennsylvania at Gettysburg was written by John Page Nicholson, who's a park commissioner, as well as, invested in the Pennsylvania story. So he was like a hoarder of of correspondence and stuff like that. So he was really passionate about saving every little snippet.
Every little tidbit.
I found a similar situation with Michigan here.
Okay.
Michigan was actually good enough to compile a book of their dedication speeches and whatnot. It's called Michigan at Gettysburg, of all things.
Makes sense.
And like half of the monuments were dedicated without any of the survivors of the regiment being here.
Oh, wow.
Huh.
They just it's a long distance to travel. These are getting to be older men.
Yeah.
And they just didn't.
Well, and didn't they? I want to say there were more financial assistance at those bigger reunions for people to get here.
That sounds familiar. Yes.
Yeah, I think Pennsylvania actually contributed quite a bit. I know Pennsylvania paid for the railroad fare for any of their veterans to come here. I think New York did the same thing. I don't know that any of the Midwest states did.
They didn't have the money. That fare was too expensive.
So, yeah. Anyways.
Just going to let that hang for as long as possible. Cool. All right. So Martin Husk, the great author of the book about the 111th New York. He, of course, you can listen to his interview over on patreon.com. Martin, he's got several questions here, but in the interest of time, we're gonna cut to number 2 there, Jess. It's most people are familiar with the monument controversy between the 12th New Jersey and the 111th New York, where veterans of the 12th contested in writing where the veterans of the 111th wanted to place their monument. Are there other examples of where other regiments battled over the placement of a monument? Oh, are there, ladies and gentlemen? First of all, he says most people are familiar. Ginny Wade, or Ginny Weed, excuse me, our mascot here this evening is getting into lots of trouble eating the rat poison I put over there.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Might want to put some charcoal down her throat pretty quick. Okay, so Jess, Martin says that most people are familiar with the monument controversy between the 12th New Jersey and 111th. I'm going to say most people are not. So would you give a little background on that? You don't know it. Okay, well, I'm going to guess. I'm just taking a guess here. I don't actually know myself, so I was kind of hoping you would know. But I'm going to guess just based on where they were, there's kind of a little bit of an overlap there, and I'm guessing the 12th New Jersey was probably saying something like, hey, you guys were kind of behind us. And then the 111th New York was like, well, no, we were over to the side of yous. And then, and then frankly, for the next 100 years or so, New York was dumping its sewage at the Jersey Shore.
Actually, the 12th New Jersey says the 111th New York was never there.
No, they don't.
Swear to God. Yep.
Well, we all know that's not true. They were there. I read Martin's book.
I know,
Did they
but
really
that's
say
what.
that?
Yeah.
That's
And we see their
sickening.
ghosts all the time.
That is, I know, we know that because we have seen their ghosts.
I'll bring the book in. tomorrow.
What book?
I have New Jersey at Gettysburg, too.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Bring it in. I should probably have that one. I'm just so happy to get out of New Jersey that I don't want to, I close my eyes when I drive past the New Jersey Monument. Probably shouldn't be saying that, but whatever.
Well, I live with one of your kinsmen. So.
I know. Well, she got out too.
She did.
All right. So anyway, let's get on to that then. There. What other examples are there of regiments battling over the placement of monuments?
I mean, the one that I'm most familiar with is the 72nd Pennsylvania at the angle, because it made it all the way to the Supreme Court. Yeah. It was I believe the 72nd against the GBMA, and part of it had to do with a lot of information the GBMA was getting from people that I guess had some sort of beef with people in the 72nd in their own brigade. So the 69th Pennsylvania, there's a guy who just created so much, argument to the contrary that they weren't on the front line at the wall when the action was happening, that they doubted the spot, and things got interesting when they're still like battling this in court, and a member of the 72nd, thinking that they had permission, was just going to start digging, breaking ground for the monument, and was arrested.
Now, the 72nd, for people, that's the monument with the guy who's got the club musket up over his shoulder. Is that right?
Right. So one of the most controversial monument placements,
just one of the most photographed,
is on the Gettysburg Quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Which, I don't know, is probably fitting.
But so it's up there right on the angle, and the argument is that they never were up on the wall like that. They came in, but they didn't get that far,
right? And if the 69th and 71st were at the wall first, and the rule that they had, the park had, was that if someone is on the front line and then someone comes up to that line later, their monument should be 20 feet back from the people that were there first. So that's what you see on Culp's Hill with the double lines of monuments, to just sort of sort out the chaos that was the battle, especially in that area. So, what is he doing on that monument? He's clubbed his musket. He's about to break somebody's skull with it. Do you think that these people are just looking around in this mess of Union bodies like, well, there's the right flank of this regiment, and here's the left flank of yours? So that, I think, is part of it. But they actually, their biggest problem, the 72nd, was that where the GBMA thought their monument should be was considerably further back than they would have ever been. So like even behind Hancock Avenue.
Oh.
So it's like really neither was the best choice.
What about somewhere in between? They couldn't land on that?
Well, like back where is it the 106th?
Yeah,
I think they were.
I think they were supposed to be on the opposite side of the road,
like on the closer side, like the other side of the road, closer to the wall, position, with maybe an advance marker. So that's what the Massachusetts regiments did. They have their main monument where they were most of the time, and then they rushed the copse of trees, and they have these tablets up there. I mean, there's a whole story.
Yeah, and from what I remember, their main monuments were originally up close to where those tablets are now. But they were, when the GBMA came out with the line of battle policy, they had to move them. Mm. And so they complied, and then the 72nd Pennsylvania shows up, and they want to put theirs right up on the wall. And Massachusetts, I think it's the 19th or 20th Mass, they get into the fight too, along with the 69th PA, kind of saying, this is BS. You guys made us move our monuments, and these guys are just allowed to do whatever they want.
Mm. Yeah, so, I mean, they obviously came in on the side of the 72nd Pennsylvania, and I honestly don't really think that, other than certain members of the other regiments, that people had that much of a problem with it.
Yeah. I'm looking, it's not the 106th, but I'm looking up the monument that you're talking about. And so keep going with your, you want me to give you the next question there?
Well, when, right before the 150th anniversary, there was a...
Oh, it's 106 Pennsylvania. I was looking up 106 New York, but it's 106 Pennsylvania. You were right.
They're
ahead.
part of the Philadelphia Brigade.
Oh,
The same.
Makes sense.
But right before the 150th anniversary, we had that thunderstorm/tornado, whatever it was.
Oh, and it blew it over.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was on the first tour that morning. I wasn't a guide. I was on a Segway tour, and we were just like, "Whoa! Like, what happened here?" Because there were branches down everywhere, and it's amazing we made it through the park to that point. But it was on posts. Like, there's these bars sticking up out of the monument, and it's just like, well, why would something that heavy need any more security than to be slipped on top of
This
these
is why.
posts? But I guess it sucked it up and like tipped it over.
Yeah. Well, it must have been a
just blew it
tornado or
over.
something that went through there.
What do they call it? A microburst?
Right, there's just not
Microburst or-
enough, there aren't enough trees in that area to really prove that the wind turned a certain way. But I always used to joke that, it's right before the 150th anniversary. The Confederates were sick of that guy waving his musket at them all those years.
Is it the Confederates or the 71st?
Exactly.
Oh,
Or
is
the
that where you were
16th.
going? I'm
Right.
sorry.
So it's like I thought it was the Confederate ghost this whole time, but maybe it was the ghost of the guys right next to him. They're like,
Yeah.
get back
Like,
there.
F you. All right. Richard Fish first from San Antone wants to know, why were so many more monuments erected at Gettysburg than at other Civil War battle sites? I mean,
Well, it's because it happened so soon.
Hello, exactly.
All right, Marky Mark, relax.
So the GBMA is established in 1864, but by comparison, because I was just curious about the dates of the other battlefields that are comparable. Chickamauga has about as many markers as Gettysburg. It's just most of them, they have a lot of tablets that tell the story everywhere.
Government
on
markers.
But they also have quite a few, I'm not sure the number, but they have quite a few like really nice ones.
So the thing here is we've got things put up by the veterans. We've got things put up by the government.
So Chickamauga didn't really get on board, or didn't get established as a park until 1889. So we're 20.
Could it
years ahead
be
of that.
also that Gettysburg was accessible right away to people? It wasn't in a war zone anymore. Like once everybody had
Well,
left.
I mean, it's
not
more
like
than
Virginia.
that, right? There's the money. So we're in the north. It's a battlefield that the states with the money have the most investment. Not the most investments in, but right. It's accessible. It's not like
Because everybody was coming down as soon as they could. As soon as they heard the battle was over, people were getting down here for various
But then
reasons.
Antietam is also, considered a northern battlefield. But all they had was the National Cemetery for years. So they had the cemetery in 1867, which was after our cemetery. And then really not anything, as far as land acquisition, nothing else until the 1890s. So that's when we're already past the monumentation era.
Yeah. But Antietam,
The peak
though,
of it.
Antietam is a pain in the butt to get to today. I mean, it's not like
Right, you got
Gettysburg. You
the
have 10
railroad.
roads coming in. You got the
Right.
railroad.
So they would bring these monuments in. Well, they had the C&O Canal, so that huge soldier monument at Antietam.
Yeah.
They like dropped it on the way,
Yeah.
and they had to.
Yeah, it's like the upper
They, like,
third of
sunk
the upper third of the statue fell off of the barge
But
into
we
the river, and it
Oh.
spent some time at the bottom of the river.
Oh,
But
God.
we biked the C&O Canal, and it's just you bike that towpath, and you just imagine the giant head of this thing just floating past you on its way to Antietam battlefield.
Yeah.
But
Well,
the
and then-
railroad would bring it in, and then you have these like Flintstones like vehicles that roll it out to the spot. But
Right.
how they got them
But-
up on Big Round Top.
But that road, though, that road from the Potomac up to Sharpsburg, I mean, in a car, it's so hilly and windy. Like, that must have been a nightmare getting up that road with that stuff. That's crazy. But yeah, I would think that Gettysburg. All right, so go ahead. You want more?
So then Gettysburg's accessible first. You got a monument here. And do you pay for another monument at Antietam? Do you pay for another monument at Chickamauga where you went after this? Some of them did. So
Yeah.
there's a unit on Cemetery Hill, I think it's Pennsylvania, that has a monument on Missionary Ridge.
Kane's Brigade. All three regiments from Kane's Brigade have monuments here on Culp's Hill and then again on Lookout Mountain.
Yeah.
Which is a super cool place.
Yeah.
There.
I guess you have to take it the monument's story itself, and every monument has a different story to it, and they're not all the same. It's not like a uniform reason why any one thing happened.
Well, and a lot of it comes
didn't.
down to money. You know, everybody notices the 42nd New York because of the Native American that can't fit in his house.
Right.
And but it's the most expensive regimental monument.
Yeah.
And everyone notices it. So the more money you have, the more people pay attention to what you have on the field.
That was the most expensive, huh?
Regimental.
Interesting.
That makes sense. That's a giant chunk of bronze on top of that.
Yeah. And what? And where did he fight the Indian? Where did he fight? Was he at Pickett's Charge?
I don't know anything
I was down
about
south
Chief
of Devil's Den,
Tamanend.
wasn't it?
Oh, he was down in Devil's Den. Oh, that's
the first Battle of Gettysburg.
Yes, he's from Tim's.
Right, they found his hatchet. Remember?
Right.
Devil's Den.
Yeah. Okay, William Richardson.
Oh, they might have found his skull. You remember that story?
Over in the railroad cut?
No, that skull they were going to auction in Maryland. It turned out it dated before the Civil War. It was like a Native American skull.
Really?
When was this?
There was an auction in Maryland, and there was some note that said that the skull was dug from a farm, I think near my house, like up north, like where the high school
note
is.
said the skull was dug at a farm near Jesse's house?
Yes, specifically.
It's so weird. Why would they do that? Okay.
I love how there's so much trust in these, notes with artifacts that.
Yeah. Right.
But
Look, this is
why
signed
would you
by
think
Abraham
it's
Lincoln,
anything
and it's a
else?
Post-it.
But there was all this, this pushback or controversy because they're auctioning a piece of a human being. So they donated it to the park, but they can't just say, hey, this is a skull from a soldier. So they send it to the Smithsonian.
And they tested it and found it was Native
pre-battle.
American.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
So I guess it's still there. I don't know where it is now.
I mean, it makes sense because, they were here before we were. So I would imagine some of their bones are still in the ground. William Richardson, Bill Richardson, I like to call him. What was the first Confederate monument placed, and was there much pushback against it? By the way, this Bill Richardson is the former governor of New Mexico. Big fan of our show.
That's not true.
No, it's not true. Well, maybe it is for all I know. I don't think it is, though. But go ahead.
Well, I mean, that was the the first Maryland battalion, which was Confederate. And we also refer to their monument placed in 1886 as the 2nd Maryland Battalion because they were forced to change the name of their regiment if they wanted to put a monument on, which is pretty huge.
Yeah.
So already it's like the GBMA wants to, but they're sensitive to this because they know it's going to be, controversial. And so it's not the only thing they had to change. I think the first wording on the monument was saying, because it's going on the field, the only place that Confederates came into the fishhook and held ground.
Mm-hmm.
So they are saying that they took the breastworks, but they made them change it to say that they occupied the breastworks because they're saying we weren't there. How could you take it if there was no one to take it from? And the 137th New York was there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go into a house that's empty, no one's there, and you start living there, you've taken that house.
But there were people there when they fought that night, and just no one further down.
Well, a lot of politics involved.
Right.
Words.
So they did it. So they made those changes. They got the monument on the field, which went undiscovered until the hordes of Union veterans reached the field.
They came back and they said, "This is no good."
And I don't have any. I mean, there's got to be something there for.
What do you mean? Something where? At the 2nd Maryland?
Before the news articles came out, I don't know if there's something in the local papers about that.
I don't know. The only place I've ever really picked up the story was right after Pennsylvania Day. I haven't really looked into local news stuff at all. That would be a question for Tim Smith.
Are you saying no local paper stuff about
I'm
the
saying
Second
there's
Maryland being
probably
placed?
more there about what happened
gotcha.
when it was going on the field, but I just don't have it.
I gotcha.
People really start losing their minds about it.
And Wisconsin might have speeches in some, historical society somewhere that just hasn't been looked into.
Yeah. Brian Derenick, he says the 83rd Pennsylvania Monument includes an officer with a striking resemblance to Colonel Strong Vincent, although Pennsylvania Battlefield Commission rules forbid the placement of an image of a regiment's commanding officer on a monument. Were there similar requirements by other states and or originally by the War Department when the park was created? Okay, now we went through this before.
Yeah, so Eric, you can answer this because I'm tired.
But this isn't Ask Eric, it's Ask Jesse.
I trust Eric.
All right, go ahead, Eric. Just in the form of a question, because we're not the experts, Eric. It's
like
we gotta,
Jeopardy.
Yes.
No,
say it in the form of a question.
I don't know how to do that. It doesn't make sense to me. So,
are you sure?
From
you don't
what
know how to
I
do
know,
there you go.
There it is.
There
From
you go.
what I
Couch
remember,
it with doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm not an expert.
Right.
There's the disclaimer.
We're not experts.
So Strong Vincent on top of the 83rd's monument is not, in fact, Strong Vincent. According to the 83rd, it is an officer who looks very much like Strong Vincent, and it's because the GBMA had a policy in place that said you can't have a monument to a specific officer below like a division commander, right?
You think, right, Eric? You think.
It's the 63rd Pennsylvania runs into this problem. They want to put Alexander Hayes on top of their monument. And they assume, incorrectly, that when they show up here to dedicate their monument, there's going to be a statue of Alexander Hayes on top of it. The problem is they said that they said in their monument proposal about the design, this is Alexander Hayes. So it got nixed by the GBMA. Nobody told the 63rd. They showed up to dedicate their monument and refused to do so because it wasn't the monument that they wanted. And so the 63rd PA leaves here without actually dedicating their monument. I don't know that they ever actually did come back to dedicate it or not.
Well, that's the thing, Eric. We don't know, right? Because we're not experts.
No, I'm not an expert.
We're guessing.
I'm really not an expert, though. So just like, it sounds like I'm being facetious, but I'm really not.
No, I'm not being facetious either. We are not experts. Jesse's an expert, but she has abdicated her role. So
I'm not an expert.
But
I strive to be closer to one.
Right. Now, hold on, though, Eric, though. The other thing, though, is that the premise of the question is wrong. We think, right, because we're not experts. But it was in Pennsylvania that said you can't do that, right?
Yeah, no, it was the GBMA.
It was GBMA. So let's
and then the War Department kind of just continued the GBMA's like monument placement policy.
Right.
Like they kept with the line of battle from what I understand.
Yeah, so a lot of the rules are about just organizing it in a way that that can be studied, that makes sense.
Right.
So
you don't want a hodgepodge of
Confederate monuments
things.
back where they started attacks to kind of avoid the situation that happened with the 2nd/1st Maryland.
Now, what was that? There was a Confederate monument. It's like it looks like an old-fashioned War Department brigade plaque, but it's actually to I think an Alabama regiment, if I'm not mistaken, down on the
4th Alabama.
4th Alabama, yeah. Do you know the story behind that off the top of your head?
That was
that's
the Southern Park Commissioner. I think it's William Robbins. Is the one that puts. So he's got money and he places that there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the last one, Pete Erickson. He wants to know. He says, "Hi. Did any of the stone for the monuments come from the granite quarries in New Hampshire?"
So I learned some cool stuff. I really like this subject.
Yes.
Because I love.
You have a friend who does this, right? Like who splits rocks and all that. Don't you have a friend who does that stuff?
No, but we're just Instagram friends. There's a place in Rockport, Massachusetts that they do like not barn restoration, but any sort of just traditional style granite
like
cutting.
old stuff. Okay,
but I mean, the only difference really is they're in the 1880s they're using steam to pummel out all those drill holes, and then they put in these wedges and feathers. They're like a prong, and then a stake.
A spike or stake goes in the prong.
And then you just, along the perforated row of drill holes, you pound those stakes in, and you can actually find them still sticking in rocks in the battlefield.
Yeah.
I'd love if somebody from a granite company would come and want a tour, because I could show them all sorts of there's all sorts of quarry spots on the field.
All over the place. By the Timbers Farm. Where else? There's
Devil's Den.
Culp's Hill, right by the Lower Culp's Hill.
There's the quarry.
The difference in the selection of different pieces for the monuments is the quality of the granite based on the bubble in the earth where it comes from. So in Westerly, Rhode Island, there's this light-colored, very dense granite that allows them to get all sorts of details into the stone. So like the 17th PA Cavalry Monument by the Peace Light, the reins of the horse are sticking out in stone from the rest of the monument, and you can only do that with granite that can hold up to those types of details being cut into it. So in New Hampshire, Concord, New Hampshire had the best sculptural granite, and really the most successful company in New Hampshire was the Swenson Granite Company, which is still in operation, I found out. As well as, so Westerly is no longer in operation, but there's a really cool museum there. It's small, but the people that work there have all kinds of, it was totally worth it. We had to divert our trip 2 hours to go there on the way to Maine last 2 years ago. But they love Gettysburg, because I think something like 80 monuments have granite from Westerly, Rhode Island.
Okay.
But of course, New Hampshire's the granite state. So I didn't look up every single one, but I would assume that all of them are New Hampshire granite. The 5th New Hampshire is made up of boulders from the Gettysburg battlefield stacked, and then there's a disc of New Hampshire Concord granite, and then one Gettysburg boulder on the top of it. It's probably the most unique monument on the battlefield.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
And the New Hampshire Sharpshooters is listed as Concord granite, but there are also other monuments like the New York Auxiliary Monument, which is 1920s. That's Concord granite, and that's you can see the more fine texture of that one.
I have to check that out now.
And
Closer.
Randomly, the base of the Barlow Monument of Barlow's Knoll. So there's quite a lot of rock that was brought in from all over the place.
Was a lot of it locally done or locally harvested?
The Gettysburg granite is really rough, so they're mostly for the stabilization of the bases of, of the monuments. It's
so
really
not sculptural, but
right.
Yeah.
And when they're putting in park avenues, they got to break apart rocks for that. So people always ask the question, were these rocks here? The diplomatic answer is there were actually more of them.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Yeah. All right, well, that is all we've got there for the monumentation era.
Oh, I got one more
you
thing.
Got one more. Go ahead.
So what I wanted to do when we were headed to Maine is I wanted to go to the Hallowell Granite Company, because they do workshops where they do that in front of you. They show you how they cut the stone and how they did all of that.
Oh, that's cool.
So they're doing one this September.
And you can go on YouTube and see these things. You showed me a video, and it's very satisfying to watch when you hear the stone crack.
And if you want to know how any monuments are sculpted, from the cutting the block from the quarry to the artists that do all the finish work and everything, the Smith Granite Company has a book that they put together on just every last detail of it. It's really applies to everything that was done on the battlefields.
If you, I think it's on our YouTube, probably going back, I don't know if it was last year or the year before when I did. I think it was the year before because I was wearing my glasses and I stopped wearing them last year. But anyway, so there's a video on our YouTube and I think our Instagram as well about the 93rd Pennsylvania. And not them, but their monument, their second monument, which is out by the John, what's his name?
Weichert.
Thank you. Farm. And it's an interesting monument to go and see. It's on a boulder, but the average Joe doesn't even go near it, first of all, because you have to go down a driveway. It looks like a private residence, and it kind of is, but it's also park. So it's kind of confusing, and it's just not inviting. And you could go walking down there, and you could see it and everything like that. But I'm just going to say this. Either go watch the video, or next time you come here, make a little adventure for yourself and go find the 93rd Pennsylvania Monument and just look around at the boulders nearby. Just look at the boulders nearby, guys, and you'll see, and you'll be like, "Oh my God, this is so cool! This is so cool!" All right, we're slap happy. I've been here all day.
What are they looking for?
Ginny is.
I'm not telling. It's the adventure, Eric. You don't tell them the answer.
Cool. Let's get in the car and go home now.
Look at the rocks. Just look around. You'll see.
I guess why I chose this subject is it brings you to current events, but it's also like a
Hold
weird
on a
little
second, Jesse.
scavenger hunt.
Easter egg hunts must be so boring for your kids, Eric. It's like, okay, I put one there, I put one there, I put one there. It's all about the finding. It's the search.
Stop where you're at. We don't do Easter egg hunts in my family. Okay?
You are a heathen.
Move on.
You are a heathen. Okay, Jesse, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Ginny has something to say.
Ginny wants to get in on it?
Yeah, she says it's long enough for one episode.
Yeah. All right, so go ahead.
But the very first things that showed up on the battlefield are crude rock carvings, and some of them not very crude.
Mm-hmm.
But the landscape itself, I think, gave an emotional attachment to the people that were coming back to try to figure out how to recreate the story of what happened here. So, I mean, people like monuments because it gives you a little bit more of an emotional attachment to the sculpture and the artwork and the people and who they were.
Yeah.
But just what they were after from the beginning is just trying to remember the people who were killed outright, right in front of them.
Yeah.
But and just to make sure that they're kind of desperate to make sure that stays and that
nobody forgets. Well, we certainly do have a lot of monuments here. Monuments, markers, memorials, all these different words. They all mean different things. Or do they? Some use them interchangeably. Some don't. They mean certain things. I mean, it's just, there's so much you can get into on this. And we'll do more monument stuff sometime in the future. But Jesse, thank you very much for coming by and doing this and answering all these questions that our listeners threw in. Thank you all for listening, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and turn those notifications on, and please consider becoming a patron today at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg. Until next time, Eric, thank you. Jesse, thank you. Listeners, thank you. Ginny Weed, thank you down there. And until next time, like I already said that phrase there, have a good one. I'm so tired.
Our hearts so stout have got us fame, forsooth 'tis known from whence we came. Wherever we go, they dread the name of Gary Owen in glory. Instead of spa, we'll drink down ale and pay the reckoning on the nail. No man for debt shall go to jail from Gary Owen in glory. Instead of spa, we'll drink down ale and pay the reckoning on the nail. No man for debt shall go to jail from Gary Owen in glory.